fortunately we still, everybody's still practicing, still going, so still working through everything. Kind of we talked about last week, but practice 8 will be tomorrow, and then we'll have our spring break after that. So everybody will be good. They'll get a break right in the middle, about 10 days, and then we'll come back and we'll finish up after that. So, again, spring's all about making progress, and it's all about taking steps forward every day. And I think our guys have done a good job practicing the way we're asking them to, pushing, and doing that. So, it's just funny. Every year you got a different team. This year you got just a really young offensive line, and so you got those young guys, that young group. They're taking their lumps right now against some older D linemen, but they're competing and they're getting better throughout it. So that's what we need them to do. In the long run, we'll be a lot better. Having all those guys here. You got 3 high school seniors that are here right now. I'd say is that Jace Mitchell on the O-line has been a really good addition for us. He's playing really well. With Coop and George still out, he's getting a bunch of reps and playing really well. Zay Alexander has been really good this spring. It's been a really good, I don't want to say a surprise, but getting him back has been really good. And just with some of those younger guys, they're just, they're getting baptized by fire. At running back, I think, Darrell's had a really good week. Stephen Blanco's still playing really good. It's been fun to kind of watch these guys go out there and compete a little bit. At wide out, you got a bunch of guys that are competing for reps and, making plays, day to day. It's kind of different people, but the play's been pretty consistent. Defensively, up front, they're doing a good job, moving the front and being active, putting pressure. Sometimes it's hard to tell, is it a lot of the young guys that, is that the issue, or is it, you're playing good on defense, which is always kind of, as a head coach, what keeps you up at night a little bit. You just, when one side plays really well, you worry, is it the other side, kind of what's the deal? But they're playing really good. They're active. At linebacker, I think the communication's been really good. Connor McPherson's still been playing really good. Jake St. Andre, Micah Johnson's had a great spring, so you got those guys coming along, on the back end. I think Avery Demery and Jeremiah Moses are stepping up, playing really good at corner. Obviously along with Brent. At star, Morian Elam is playing really good. Gloston is working in there as well as Brent a little bit to create some depth there. And then at safety, it's the guys that we've been talking about quite a bit. Last year you are a little young there, but you got some of those guys that played well last year when they got in there, and they're playing well this spring. Whether it's Cody or Colin or Lake or Rennell, all those guys are competing and playing really well. So it's been good. A lot of bright spots. Certainly still a long way to go. Get this thing game ready. But, if we can make as much progress in the second half of spring as we did in the first, you'll feel really good about where we're at going in the summer.
With the break coming up and all the things, you feel like as far as expectations are kind of you set ahead of the break is like you're fairly on schedule. You feel maybe ahead of schedule as to how you kind of had this spring planned out?
I don't know. It's, pleased with the progress that we're making. I don't know. Every year it's just different. You don't really know what exactly you got to expect. What I'm pleased with is a standard that the guys have set as far as the effort, the toughness, and the way that they're practicing, which is the most important thing. The execution in some spots is still not exactly where you want it to be, but we're still adding a lot of stuff. 7 days in, you still have, pretty heavy installs early on. So that'll start to thin out a little bit. I hope the execution gets better in the second half, which is, part of it. But, I've said from the beginning, I'm more concerned with the effort and the toughness and the fundamentals that we're playing with more so than I am the execution, because, you got 15 days to tighten that up, but then you've got all summer and all fall camp to get the execution exactly where you want it. So, I'm pleased with it. I don't know that don't know I would say we're ahead or behind, but I think we're doing from where we were day one to where we are now is what you want it to look like. It's getting better every day.
Talking about the offensive line, are y'all doing anything differently on how you're handling after last year with all the injuries, or was the decision made like that was a fluky thing? We're just going to kind of keep things as is and hope for a better result?
Yeah, I've been here for, 11 years, and, this will be my 11th year. Last year was the first year I've ever experienced anything like that. I mean, we didn't change the way we practiced last year for all that stuff to happen. I mean, football is just one of those games. I mean, it happens like that sometimes. So, I mean, not really. We went back and looked at all the injuries and tried to find some type of common theme or thread or something that we could, but I mean, one of them's a foot. I think there was 2 knees. It's just actually 2 feet, 2 knees. I mean, it was like just an array of different things that, Matt B missed a game with a shoulder. One's a toe. You look at the things you're doing in strength and conditioning because it's always like, well, if there's a common thread in there, then maybe there's something there. But I mean, it is what it is. I mean, we are going to practice hard. I think you have to. Think you just got to, I mean, shoot, hope's not a great plan, but I mean, you got to hope that, you can't have another year like that in back, certainly not in back-to-back years.
You talked about that offensive line being a little bit younger. I assume they're getting a good look from a more senior defensive line. I guess that's good for the offensive line. What about your defensive line? Does that slow their progress at all? Or are they building confidence to be able to pick on some of the younger guys?
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say they're picking on. I mean, they're competing. There's so much physical and mental development that goes on, on the O-line and D-line with, obviously the physical part's a huge part of it, and you got guys that are, 5th-year seniors and guys that are seniors in high school. So physically, some of those guys are a little behind. And then, the mental aspect of it, of being able to communicate and do all those things at the same time. So, yeah, I mean, I'd say our D-line, particularly the 2nd and 3rd group are further ahead than the O-line. But, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, like I said, we weren't going to go in the portal and take a bunch of O-linemen just to have a better spring. I think it's the greater good in the long run and what these guys are going to be. And, those 3 freshman O-linemen that are here right now are going to be good players. So in the long run, you got to look at the greater good. To me, it wasn't about having, a better 15 days versus a better long-term product. I think anytime you get the opportunity to choose what's best in the long run, you choose that, even if in the short term might not be exactly what you want it to look like. But like I said, I mean, those guys have come a long way, in 7 practices. And the fun thing about young players is their development, they should be on a higher trajectory just because everything's so new and all that stuff. And they are, so you wish sometimes you had, some older, more experienced players for the D-line right now. But once you get some of these guys back that are injured, that creates more depth. And as these young guys get better in the long run, it makes you a better team. So, we knew, and I told the staff before, I said, look, it's not going to be perfect every day, especially in some of these, 2nd and 3rd group reps. But in the long run, it'll be really good for us. And I believe that.
Some of the guys that had to play offensive line because of all the injuries last year were just playing way ahead of schedule. I know, but like a guy like Jacoby seemed like he kind of had are they ready to compete for starting some of those? Like Jacoby ready to compete for starting? From what you see?
Yeah, I'd say Jacoby is for sure. I think his play when he was kind of pushing action was really good. He played really well. There's still a lot of things he's got to clean up, first step. And he missed a bunch of time at the end of last year that would have been big for him. So he's got a lot of things to clean up and continue to grow as a player, as a true sophomore right now. But yeah, he's going to be ready to go compete. You feel really good about his development, where he's going to be at. He's playing some center right now, which is good. It's kind of what we thought maybe would be his best position, playing center and guard right now, playing well. I'd say, Balin Williams, who was forced in last year, no, I mean, he's not ready to compete yet. He's still got a long way to go to get there. He's made progress since last year. But that's part of the game when you sign high school O-linemen. Some of them are going to take 2 or 3 years before they're ready to play, and that's part of what it is. I think Ryder is probably on the outside, looking in for a starting job, but he's grown, he's gotten better over the years. You kind of hope that maybe, he's still a really good offseason away from competing right now is kind of the way it feels. But again, we have 8 days left. So, he's getting a bunch of reps and he's getting an opportunity to show that he is or isn't. But no, Jacoby certainly to me is right in the middle of it. I think with Jace playing really well, and Zay playing really well, George gives you some flexibility where George could play in or out. I really think Jace could play in or out. So that gives you a couple swing guys in there, that help make it better as far as depth wise goes. But no, I mean, we feel you always try to get 8 that you feel really, really good about. And I think we'll be on track. Excuse me. I think we'll be on track for that. Last year was just unique because we felt like, in spring we had, 10, 11 that we felt really, really good about. And in the end, thank God that we did. But, this year will be a little bit more like a normal year where it's like, all right, like we got these 7 that we feel really good about. Who's 8, who's 9, and trying to get into there, because, Xavier Brown's out, which is unfortunate because this was going to be a big spring for him, Coop and George, it always, you hate it whenever guys miss spring because there's so much development that happens, but those guys have played well. You've kind of seen them play in games and George is at the point in his career where it's like, he's really learned a lot. All he needs to do is continue to sharpen the sword a little bit. Guys like Xavier that miss, that hurts them, tremendously because, it's not just 15 spring practices. It's 6 months of development that they miss as well. So, we'll see where he's at when he gets back this summer too.
How much on the back burner or do you make much progress or make any decision with special teams in the spring?
As far as the specialists are concerned?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I think, you try to come out of spring and know what it is. We have really one long snapper right now that we're going to add another one, for the summer to let them compete. And I think Jackson's done a pretty good job. Teddy's been an emergency long snapper for us the last couple of years, Teddy Golick, and he does a good job with it as well. He's competitive. He's a guy that you feel comfortable if he had to go do it, he could go in there and operate. As far as kickers go, Sterner is certainly penciled in as our starting kicker, and he's continued to do a good job there. I think at punter, you got Mason, who's a first-year punter, and, you got Breck Schultz, who's punts really well too. So let those guys compete for it and figure it out as it goes, but not in a hurry, to really make a decision. I think it's awesome when you can make those decisions in spring. But if you're not 100% sure of the direction, then to me, there's no point in making a decision before you need to. And we got a lot of time before we need to.
Any movement in that backup quarterback spot? Looking like Beal still?
Yeah, I'd say he's had the best spring out of the 3 guys so far. He's got his confidence back is really what it looks like. And he's really playing and competing at a high level right now, which is what, you put guys like that in competition and see how they respond. And I'm proud of his response. I think Coleman's had a great spring too. He is getting a lot better. He is operating. He took a rack with the ones yesterday and had a really good rack and did a great job, made good decisions, made some really good throws, ran the ball efficiently. So I'm pleased with the way the competition's going in there. I'm pleased with the way they've responded to it, particularly, for Daniel. And that's what I told him, kind of recapping last year. It's like, it's the first time you've ever really been in a competition like that. It's hard, because there's, you're sitting there looking around. It's like, man, that's a really good play, and then you start worrying about, well, these guys are making really good plays. I got to go do this, that, the other, instead of just doing your job. And right now he's just competing at a high level. He's playing with a lot of confidence and he's, really running the offense very well. So, I'd say so far he's definitely had the best spring, out of the backup situation. But again, that's 7 days in, 7 days is a snap of the fingers in the grand scheme of things and getting to the season.
With practice days, are there any specific questions you're hoping gets answered, or is this more kind of a general thing you're looking at with that practice?
Yeah, I'm not a big believer that one day. I don't think you win a job in a day, and I don't think you lose a job in a day. I think there's a body of work over a long period of time that goes into, kind of where you fit in the grand scheme of things. And, what I want to see him go do is I want to see him go compete, be excited about playing the game, told him, we got a 1-day season essentially. You got a break after this and there's nothing else to be worried about till we get back. So we need to prepare ourselves to go and execute well, to go play well, to go make plays, to go do our job at a high level. You want to see the competitors compete day in and day out. So no, I wouldn't say day 8 is more important than any other one, but it's just as important as all of them, really.
Cam Riley in his unique situation, how has he progressed? What have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough to do both, you know. I mean, it really is. And, you know, he's trying to do both, you know, at a high level, you know. And I mean, he's back and forth. He's with us as much as he can be. You know, we kind of talked about it with, you know, with Coach Deggs and with baseball before. Like, look, you know, I mean, I'm not going to tell a kid that they can do both and not really give them a chance to do both. That's, you know, that's not fair. You know, if you recruit a kid and you tell him that, and then the first thing you do is make it impossible for him to have success in both, well, then, you know, you're not worth your word. And so he's with baseball, you know, as much as he can. He's with us as much as time allows. So he hasn't had a ton of off season, a ton of reps with us. So, you know, I think that's still to be determined a little bit.